On Christmas Eve, Grandpa smiled and said, "How's that $480,000 house I bought you?" I went silent. I never got a house. Then he looked over at my dad, and that's when everything fell apart. That Christmas, my family didn't just break my heart, they shattered my entire reality. What I found out that night, about the people who were supposed to love me most, was a betrayal so deep, so sickening, it completely redefined my entire future. I remember crunching up the snowy walkway to their imposing colonial on Maple Hollow Lane, late again, my breath a cloud in the bitter December air. In my hand, I clutched a small, wooden jewelry box I'd painstakingly carved myself, a peace offering, really. A desperate hope for a place at their table. "Samantha, there you are, sweetheart." Grandpa Thomas enveloped me in a bear hug the moment I stepped inside. His silver hair was perfectly combed, and that familiar scent of his aftershave always felt like a second embrace. He pulled away, his eyes sparkling. "How do you like your house? Is everything to your liking?" The room went absolutely silent. My dad's fork clattered against his plate. Tracy, my stepmother, froze mid-pour, wine teetering dangerously close to the rim of her glass. "My house?" The words stuck in my throat, dry and tasteless. Grandpa Thomas's smile wavered. Deep lines formed between his brows as his gaze darted from me to Dad, then back. "The house on Sycamore. The one I wired the money for last month." Dad shot up, his napkin falling forgotten to the floor. "Dad, we should discuss this later. Samantha just arrived, and the roast will get cold." I saw Tracy's hand trembling as she set down the wine bottle. My half-sister, Lily, just blinked owlishly, confusion written all over her face. She didn't know either. My stomach plummeted. Something was profoundly, terribly wrong. The grand dining room, with its crystal chandelier and polished mahogany table, suddenly felt like a stage set. And I was the only one who hadn't gotten the script. My mind flashed back to my childhood, squeezed into that converted attic space, while Lily sprawled in her princess bedroom downstairs. My mother died bringing me into this world, and Tracy arrived when I was 4, already pregnant with Lily. That's when the pattern started. Lily at the center, me orbiting the edges. "There's no money left for you," Dad had said when I got accepted to architecture school. I still remember his expression, not regret, just mild inconvenience at having to deliver the news. I worked night shifts at Joe's Diner for 3 years, drafting building plans on napkins during slow hours. My studio apartment barely fit my bed and drafting table. The invitation to Christmas dinner had seemed like progress, a chance to finally belong. How wrong I was. Tracy cleared her throat, a calculated move. "Sam, tell everyone about your little drawing class. Didn't you say you're teaching now?" Her obvious deflection made my cheeks burn. But for once, I didn't shrink away. "Actually," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I'd like to know what Grandpa means." Grandpa Thomas stood, hands flat on the table, his voice cutting through the room like a steel blade. "I wired $480,000 for a house on Sycamore Street. Richard said it was for Samantha, a graduation gift. But clearly, my granddaughter knows nothing about it." Dad's laugh sounded forced, almost hysterical. "It's a temporary arrangement. We're managing the property until Samantha finishes school." "It's complicated, Dad." "Then uncomplicate it," Grandpa said, his gaze unwavering. My eyes drifted to the wall of family photos. Vacations, birthdays, graduations. I saw it now, what I'd always suspected. I was missing from most of them. The few where I appeared were during Grandpa's visits. "You've been using me," I whispered, the truth crystallizing in my mind. "You only invited me to family events when Grandpa was coming." Dad didn't deny it. Tracy suddenly found her dessert spoon utterly fascinating. "The money was for Samantha," Grandpa Thomas said, his voice hardening. "Not for you to buy that monstrosity of an SUV or for Lily's horse riding lessons." It all clicked. Dad, manipulating Grandpa for money while keeping me at arm's length. Tracy, climbing the social ladder on family wealth. Only Grandpa Thomas, despite living halfway across the country in Denver, had ever shown me genuine love. "Pack your things, Samantha. You're coming to Denver with me." Grandpa's words fell like a judgment, a lifeline. "Dad, don't be dramatic. We're still family." Dad's voice carried a threat beneath the plea. I stood there quietly, looking at those family photos without me. 3 smiling faces where there should have been 4. The missing piece that never quite fit. "I'll get my coat," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Upstairs, I paused at Lily's door. Her room was 3 times the size of my childhood attic space. I didn't hate her. She was as much a pawn as I was, just one with far better benefits. When I returned downstairs, Grandpa Thomas was waiting by the door, car keys in hand. Dad was red-faced, whispering furiously. Tracy dabbed at non-existent tears. "Ready?" Grandpa asked. I nodded, clutching my small wooden box, the gift I'd made that nobody would receive. The handcrafted maple lid took me weeks to carve, with delicate snowflake patterns that reminded me of winters spent building snowmen with Grandpa Thomas before Dad deemed me too old for childish activities. Outside, the December wind bit at my cheeks, but it felt cleansing. Refreshing. The Christmas lights strung along the eaves of the house cast colorful reflections in the snow. Another perfect facade. "Your mother would be proud of you," Grandpa Thomas said quietly as we crunched toward his car. She never let anyone walk all over her either. The mention of my mother sent a warmth through my chest. I only had photographs and stories, but in that moment, I felt connected to her strength. Grandpa opened the passenger door for me, then paused. "We can fight this, you know. That money is legally yours." I considered his words, the years of exclusion, the carefully constructed lies, my journal entries full of hope when they'd suddenly started inviting me to family dinners, all a charade for Grandpa's benefit. "Some battles aren't worth the cost," I said finally. As we drove away from Maple Hollow Lane, I didn't look back. Some families aren't worth fighting for. But as Grandpa's hand briefly squeezed mine, I realized some definitely are. 3 days later, in the quiet aftermath of my shattered reality, the bank statements spread across Thomas's granite kitchen island told a story more painful than any novel I'd ever read. Each page revealed another layer of deception, another moment my father stole from me. My hands shook as I smoothed out the wire transfer documentation. "There it is," Thomas said, his finger tapping on the memo line. "Samantha Carter home purchase." I stared at the words until they blurred. Nearly $500,000, earmarked with my name, sent from my grandfather's account to my father's. Money I never saw. A house I never lived in. "Look at this." Thomas slid a folder of printed emails across the counter. Richard, claiming to be acting on my behalf. Each email made my stomach tighten. My father's casual tone, discussing Samantha's house and what's best for her future, all while systematically stealing my inheritance. I flipped through property records, showing Tracy listed as the sole owner of the home on Sycamore Street. "And this," Thomas said, his voice hardening as he revealed a power of attorney document. "This signature. Is it yours?" The scrawl that was supposed to be my name looked nothing like my handwriting. "No," I whispered. "I never signed this." Thomas nodded once, like he expected this answer. "Forged. That's a federal offense." The Denver skyline glittered through the wall of windows in his condo, indifferent to the collapse of my family illusions. I'd been there 3 days since Christmas dinner, and each hour brought new horrors. Thomas opened his laptop. "There's more." He had his accountant pull records. The spreadsheet on screen showed dozens of withdrawals from an account labeled Samantha's Trust. Money for Lily's private school tuition. Money for family vacations to Europe. Money for Tracy's designer wardrobe. "Your college fund," Thomas explained, his voice tight with anger. "I established it when you were born. It should have had nearly $300,000 by the time you turned 18. Richard emptied it years ago." I thought of my cramped studio apartment, the night shifts at the diner, the student loans crushing me with debt. All while my college fund paid for Lily's horseback riding lessons and Tracy's spa memberships. "There's this too," Thomas continued, pulling up more documents. "Your mother's inheritance. It wasn't much, but she wanted me to have it. I never knew my mother left me anything." The small inheritance, $42,000, had been diverted to renovations on the main bathroom in their house. I remembered Tracy bragging about the Italian marble and heated floors, while I showered in my apartment where the hot water lasted 3 minutes. Thomas clicked through to another screen. A credit card in my name. Current balance, $23,000. My credit score. My financial future. My identity. All stolen by people who were supposed to protect me. The tax implications alone, Thomas shook his head, explaining how gift money reported in my name meant I could owe taxes on funds I never received. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to process the scale of this betrayal. How could they do this? Richard orchestrated everything, Thomas said, his voice hollow. My own son. He's been systematically abusing your finances for years. And Tracy? An enabler. She deliberately kept you separated from family events unless I was visiting. Created a narrative that you were disinterested. Antisocial. Antisocial, I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping. And Lily? I asked, thinking of my half-sister who benefited from everything stolen from me. An unwitting beneficiary, Thomas's expression softened. Raised to expect everything without questioning where it came from. She's a victim, too. In a different way. I walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. Below, Denver continued its evening routine. Cars flowing like blood cells through the city's veins. What happens now? I asked. Richard could face legal consequences for fraud and identity theft. Tracy's social standing would collapse if this became public. Your credit score is in shambles, which could impact your career in architecture. Thomas sighed. And they're threatening to contest any financial support I give you directly. The stakes felt overwhelming. My future, my career, my family, all hanging by threads I never knew were so fragile. I found something while you were sleeping, Thomas said, retrieving a portfolio from his office. Inside were childhood sketches. Buildings I designed when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. Crude drawings of towers and bridges. Houses with elaborate floor plans. You kept these? I asked, my throat tight. I always knew you were the builder in the family, he said quietly. Not Richard with his get-rich-quick schemes. Not Lily with her marketing degree. You. We stood together at the window, looking at the Denver skyline. Buildings reaching toward the clouds. Structures someone once imagined and then brought to life. Something shifted inside me, a weight lifting. A decision forming. I'm done seeking validation from people who never valued me. Done trying to earn love that should have been freely given. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. No grinding teeth. No anxiety dreams. Just rest. Morning brought clarity and allies. Thomas introduced me to the dean of a university architecture program. His lawyer friend, Morgan, began investigating the fraud and identity theft. At lunch, I met Evan, a classmate who offered friendship without the hidden agendas I'd grown accustomed to. I need someone part-time at the development firm, Thomas mentioned casually over coffee. Someone who understands both design and business. Interested. By evening, I'd met a study group that accepted me immediately, valuing my talent without questioning whether I belonged. The next morning brought the hardest step. Filing a police report against my own father. The officer took my statement matter-of-factly, explaining the process of investigating identity theft. It's better to freeze your credit immediately, she advised. Morgan helped me complete the paperwork, securing my financial future from further exploitation. The protective measures felt like armor after years of vulnerability. My phone buzzed continuously throughout the day. Richard's frantic voicemails piled up. How could you do this to family? After everything we've done for you. You're making a terrible mistake. Tracy took to social media, posting about ungrateful children and family loyalty without naming me directly. Her friends commented with sympathy emojis, unaware they were supporting someone who helped steal my inheritance. I blocked their numbers one by one. Richard. Tracy. Even Lily, whose confused texts showed she still didn't understand what her parents did. The silence that followed felt like the first clean breath after years of drowning. Thomas found me on the balcony that evening. It's just the beginning, he warned. They won't give up easily. I know, I said, watching the city lights come alive as dusk settled over Denver. But neither will I. For the first time in my life, I was fighting for myself instead of for their approval. And though the cost was high, the family I thought I had was gone forever. I finally understood what Thomas meant about being the builder in the family. Some things need to be torn down before you can build something better. The persistent knocking at Thomas's development office door turned aggressive, rattling the frosted glass panel. I glanced up from my sketch as Evan placed a protective hand on my shoulder. "I know she's in there." Richard's voice boomed through the door. "Samantha, this has gone far enough." My pencil snapped between my fingers. 2 weeks since Christmas, and they wouldn't stop. Yesterday, my psychology professor had pulled me aside after class, concern etched on her face. "Your mother called about a family emergency," she'd said. "Is everything all right?" Tracy wasn't my mother. And there was no emergency, just another tactic to disrupt my life. Thomas stood, shoulders squared. "Stay here," he told me. Then opened the door just enough to block Richard's view. "This is a place of business," Thomas said, his voice steady. "If you want to speak with my granddaughter, make an appointment. Don't lecture me about family." Richard snarled. "Extended family is calling us daily, telling us to fix this. Even Aunt Marjorie thinks Samantha needs to make peace." Thomas didn't budge. "Peace requires honesty, Richard, something you seem unfamiliar with." I focused on my breathing, in for 4 counts, out for 6, while they argued. My phone buzzed with notifications. More tearful Instagram videos from Lily about our family being torn apart. The comments were filled with sympathy for her. Strangers condemning me without knowing the truth. "Have you seen what they've been posting about your development company?" Richard's voice dropped to a threatening whisper. "Anonymous reviews claiming substandard materials. Delayed timelines. That could hurt your reputation, Dad." My stomach churned. They were targeting Thomas now because of me. When the door finally closed, Thomas returned, his face flushed but composed. "Well," he said, attempting a smile. That was invigorating. "They're writing fake reviews about your business," I said, the guilt immediate and crushing. "Because of me." Thomas waved his hand dismissively. "Reviews don't build houses, Samantha. Quality does." He pointed to my architectural model on the corner of his desk, a design that won department recognition last week. "This is what matters." Speaking of which, the Wilsons called again. They specifically asked for your input on their residential design. Pride flickered through me, momentarily displacing the anxiety. "Really? Really?" And Professor Bennett mentioned an architectural internship possibility. "Your talent is being recognized." I touched the model gently. A sustainable small home designed with both functionality and beauty in mind. Every weekend hiking trip with Evan had fed into this vision, building my physical and mental resilience while inspiring organic elements in my designs. "Your mother would be ashamed." Richard's words echoed in my head as I exited my afternoon class 2 days later. He stood waiting, arms crossed, in the middle of the campus pathway. Students slowed their pace, watching the confrontation unfold. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept walking. 23 years I raised you," he continued, blocking my path. "And this is how you repay us?" "By turning Thomas against me." "I didn't turn anyone against you," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "Your actions did that." His face reddened. "Your mother would be ashamed of what you're doing to this family." Something shifted inside me, not anger, but absolute clarity. She'd be ashamed I was invisible for 23 years. The words hung between us. Students had gathered now, forming a protective semicircle behind me. "You okay, Sam?" asked Melissa from my study group. Others murmured support. Richard's eyes darted nervously at the audience. "This is a private family matter." "Then why confront me in public?" I countered. When campus security approached, summoned by someone in the crowd, Richard retreated, pointing a finger at me. This isn't over. But it was over in ways he didn't understand yet. Later that evening, Thomas called with news. "I've terminated Richard's partnership extension," he said simply. "The paperwork is filed." "What does that mean?" I asked, curled up on my new apartment sofa, a housewarming gift from Thomas. "It means your father no longer has a position at my company. Morgan cease and desist letter has been delivered to both Richard and Tracy. We've documented every harassment incident thanks to Evan's diligent record-keeping." Evan smiled from the kitchen where he was preparing dinner. My study group had created a protective buffer at university events, ensuring I was never alone when Richard or Tracy might appear. "Samantha," Thomas said gently, "you are never the problem. Remember that." When the power shift happened, it was swift and merciless. Richard's company position terminated. Tracy forced to seek employment for the first time in years. Lily, unprepared for responsibility, dropped out of college when the tuition payment didn't arrive. Their luxury lifestyle crumbled as financial reality hit. Meanwhile, I focused forward, not backward. My architectural sketches filled portfolios. Journal entries documented my growth. Thomas installed security cameras at his home. "They're just precautions," he assured me when I expressed concern. The morning sun warmed our faces as Evan and I hiked our favorite mountain trail. The physical exertion felt good, cleansing. We reached the summit viewpoint around noon. "Beautiful," Evan said, but he was looking at me, not the landscape. Something cracked inside my chest. The tears came without warning, hot and fast. Years of suppressed pain and rejection pouring out in heaving sobs. "I still sometimes wish they had loved me," I confessed, the words torn from somewhere deep and wounded. How pathetic is that? Evan didn't offer empty platitudes. "They don't know how to love anyone properly," he said instead. Honest and clear. Not even themselves. We sat in silence, watching the sun paint the valley below in golden light. A new perspective, quite literally. Back in Denver, Thomas and Morgan were building foundations for future resolution. A quitclaim deed for the Maple Hollow Lane house was being prepared. Thomas updated his will to protect my inheritance. My university submission showed remarkable growth and talent, drawing interest from faculty and local firms alike. "The sustainable home concept has merit," my professor noted during review. "Your technical skills have advanced considerably." I was building connections without fear of rejection. Now, friendships that felt genuine, not conditional. When Tracy called, her voice was stripped of its usual superiority. "We're about to lose everything," she said, desperation evident. "Richard is drinking again. Lily won't get out of bed. We need your help with Thomas." The old Samantha would have yielded, desperate for inclusion. The new one didn't. "You only remembered I was family when Grandpa was watching," I replied calmly. Later that evening, a notification arrived. The quitclaim deed had been delivered to Richard. I added the final touches to my sketch of a future project, one that would use proceeds from the house sale to build something lasting and meaningful. Thomas looked over my shoulder, his pride evident. "You're building more than houses," he said. I nodded, understanding the truth of his words. I was building a life on my own terms, one that couldn't be stolen or diminished by people who never saw my worth. On Tuesday next week, the morning sun filtered through my apartment blinds as Morgan placed a stack of legal documents on my kitchen table. Each page represented another brick in the wall I was building between my past and future. "They've been served," Morgan said, tucking a strand of silver-streaked hair behind her ear. Her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, softened momentarily. Richard looked like he'd seen a ghost when I handed him the papers. I ran my fingers over the top document, a formal demand for the transfer of the Sycamore Street house to my name, the rightful owner, me. "Did he say anything?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Morgan's lips curved into a tight smile. "He tried to charm me. Old habits die hard with men like that." She tapped a blue folder. "These financial records prove the fraud. The authorities have copies now." My phone buzzed. An email from the credit restoration agency confirming they'd begun the process of repairing the damage Richard inflicted on my credit score. Another buzz, the architecture department, acknowledging receipt of my scholarship application. I'd leveraged my story, turning personal pain into professional purpose. Professor Jenkins had encouraged it. "Your experience shapes your perspective. Use it." "Samantha." Morgan's voice pulled me back. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Richard won't go down without a fight. The question hung in the air like smoke. Am I ready? 6 months ago, I couldn't even make eye contact with my father across the dinner table. Now I was taking back what was mine. I was ready. The battle began sooner than expected. By afternoon, Grandpa Thomas called, his voice tight with controlled anger. Richard's telling everyone I'm senile, he said. Claims I don't remember what the money was for. That you're manipulating me. The hurt in his voice stabbed at my chest. We knew this was coming, I reminded him. And myself. Dr. Harlow is expecting you tomorrow for the cognitive assessment. I shouldn't need to prove I'm of sound mind to my own son. The weariness in his voice broke my heart. I know, Grandpa. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for standing up for yourself, sweetheart. After we hung up, my phone flooded with notifications. Tracy had contacted the local news station about elder abuse in our family. My stomach clenched as I scrolled through the social media posts she'd tagged me in, painting me as the villain. The university campus offered no sanctuary. I was halfway through my advanced structural design class when Lily appeared in the doorway, face streaked with tears, drawing every eye in the room. How could you make us homeless? She wailed. The performance worthy of an award. Dad says we'll lose everything because of you. Professor Jenkins stood. Campus security, please. Her voice brooked no argument as she pointed to the emergency call button by the door. Later, Evan walked me to my car, the evening sky deepening to indigo above us. Your sister has quite the flair for drama, he commented, scanning the parking lot for any unwelcome visitors. Half-sister, I corrected automatically. And yes, she learned from the best. I checked my phone. 3 voicemails from extended family members I barely knew, all pressuring me to drop the case, to think about how this was affecting Thomas. Evan nodded toward my screen. More flying monkeys? The whole circus. I slipped my phone into my pocket. Richard and Tracy have everyone convinced I'm destroying the family for money. What are you going to do? The questions stopped me. What was I doing? Fighting a battle that seemed to grow larger each day? Sacrificing my peace for justice? I'm going to class, I said finally. I'm going to focus on the design competition. I'm going to live my life. Evan smiled. They hate that most of all, you know, when they can't make you react. The next morning brought a text from an unknown number. Drop the case or Thomas's business irregularities from 2016 go public. The threat turned my blood cold. But I forwarded it to Morgan without responding. Another piece of evidence. In the design studio, Professor Jenkins reviewed my latest work, her fingers tracing the lines of my sustainable housing concept. You're creating safety, she observed. Not just shelter, but sanctuary. The comment stopped me. I hadn't consciously intended that. But looking at my design, the protective courtyards, the transparent walls that still maintain privacy, the multiple exit points, I recognized the truth in her words. My architecture reflects my journey, I admitted quietly. She nodded. Healthy boundaries aren't walls, but foundations. Your design shows that beautifully. Later, Evan peered over my shoulder as I refined the concept. You don't design to impress, but to protect, he said. That's rare. I incorporated more open spaces, more transparency. The light flowed through my design like truth through darkness. Morgan called that evening. Richard's accusations triggered a full financial investigation into him, she said, satisfaction evident in her voice. His attempt to discredit Thomas backfired spectacularly. The tables turned quickly after that. Tracy's social media campaign gained negative attention when her friends began questioning her version of events. Lily's university status was revoked following her disruptive behavior and harassment. Their desperate attempt to access Thomas's medical records was discovered by hospital security. When Richard and Tracy tried to rally the extended family against us, the unified front crumbled as relatives began to see through their manipulation. The local business community issued statements supporting Thomas. The university dean publicly praised my architectural talent during a department showcase. Tracy's friends distanced themselves, uncomfortable with her increasingly frantic posts. Professional associations denied Richard's membership renewals as whispers of fraud circulated. They're imploding, Evan observed as we watched Richard and Tracy argue publicly at a community fundraiser, their masks slipping to reveal the ugliness beneath. Look at them, they can't even maintain the facade anymore. Thomas's business partners issued a formal statement of support. Evan organized a student petition against harassment on campus. Morgan successfully filed a restraining order against Richard and Tracy. My department showcased my work and members of the Denver development community offered mentorship. The final blow came when Richard faced potential fraud charges for misappropriating not just Thomas's money, but funds from several investors. Tracy's carefully cultivated social standing collapsed. Lily was forced to get a part-time job for the first time in her life, posting angry tirades about her toxic parents who lied to everyone. The foreclosure notice arrived at the luxury home on Maple Hollow Lane the same day I learned my design had been selected for a sustainable housing initiative. The symmetry felt like poetry. That evening, Grandpa Thomas and I sat on his porch, watching the sunset paint the Denver skyline gold. He raised his coffee mug in a toast. "To foundations," he said, "not facades." I clinked my mug against his. "To truth." Behind us, my architectural models caught the fading light, structures built not to impress, but to endure. Just like me. On Monday, my phone buzzed with Tracy's number for the 4th time today. I let it go to voicemail again, watching the notification appear while I sketched facade modifications for my university competition entry. The timestamp read 7:48 p.m. "Samantha, it's Tracy. Your father's in the hospital. The doctors say it might be his heart. He might not make it. Please call me back. Even after everything, he's still your father." I set my pencil down, noting the tremor in my hand. The doctors said no such thing. Morgan confirmed Richard was admitted for stress-induced exhaustion after the settlement papers arrived yesterday. Classic manipulation. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Through the peephole, I saw Lily standing on my apartment doorstep, her eyes red-rimmed, hands clutching her designer purse like a life preserver. "What are you doing here?" I asked through the crack in the door, chain still latched. "Sam, please." Her voice broke. "Dad's in the hospital. Don't you care at all?" The manipulation reached all the way down to the youngest branch of the family tree. I opened the door but blocked the entrance. "How did you find my address? Does it matter? Our family is falling apart." There's an email chain, with all the relatives talking about Christian forgiveness. Even Pastor Williams called asking if you'll talk to Dad. I almost laughed. Pastor Williams from the church? Dad donated that new wing to last year? The one we only attended when Grandpa visited. You're being cruel. Lily's voice hardened, her well-rehearsed lines hitting their marks. Dad might die thinking you hate him. I don't hate him, Lily. I just finally see him clearly. The stress made my chest tighten uncomfortably. I'd been having these spells since the confrontation at Christmas. Thomas noticed one yesterday, worry lines deepening around his eyes as he watched me press a hand against my sternum. Lily left eventually, but the onslaught continued. Richard's lawyer called the next morning while I was revising my competition drawings. "Miss Carter, I'm Lawrence Myers representing your father. I have a settlement offer that could make this whole unfortunate situation go away." His voice carried the smooth confidence of someone accustomed to cleaning up wealthy clients' messes. "I already have Morgan, thank you." I hung up, then silenced my phone when it immediately rang again. Later, my apartment buzzer sounded. The church pastor stood at the entrance, Bible in hand, talking about prodigal children and Christian forgiveness. I politely declined his counsel. The next day, Tracy called again. "We're contesting Thomas's will. You've poisoned him against his own son, his flesh and blood." Morgan assured me they had no legal standing, but the noise of it all, the barrage of accusations and guilt-inducing tactics, created a fog around me. I missed 2 days of classes. My competition deadline loomed while family chaos swirled. Even Evan's parents had started asking questions about his involvement with our troubled family situation. Old insecurities rose like ghosts. Was I overreacting? Should I just forgive and forget to make the noise stop? Then Thomas had a minor heart episode. The doctor called it stress-induced angina. Nothing serious, but enough to frighten me. I sat beside his hospital bed, watching his weathered face in repose, seeing the toll of Richard's betrayal on the man who never gave up on either of us. "I'm calling off the lawsuit," I whispered, holding his hand. "It's not worth your health." Thomas's eyes fluttered open. "Don't you dare. We finish what we started." The determination in his voice steadied me. I returned to my drafting table that night with renewed focus, working until dawn broke over the city skyline. 2 days later, it happened. The notarized quitclaim deed arrived via courier while Thomas and I shared breakfast. My hands shook as I read the document, confirming what Morgan promised. The house on Maple Hollow Lane, officially transferred to my name. "We did it," I whispered, hardly believing the paper in my hands. Thomas smiled, tension visibly falling from his shoulders. Morgan came through. That afternoon, Morgan arrived with a thick folder. He spread documents across Thomas's dining table, explaining the leverage that brought Richard to heel. I presented him with the complete financial fraud timeline, Morgan said, his meticulous nature evident in the color-coded tabs. The evidence would have been sufficient for criminal charges, but we held that as our bargaining chip. The property transfer represents partial financial restitution. He pointed to a document with the university letterhead. "Your architecture scholarship is now secure, contingent on the boundaries we've established. The no-contact order is legally binding. They can't approach you, Thomas, or the university campus." I studied the documentation of Tracy's social media posts, Lily's disruptive campus visits, and Richard's manipulative voicemails, all preserved and cataloged. "What happens to them now?" I asked. Morgan adjusted his glasses. "Richard's been removed from his professional organizations, pending ethics investigations. Tracy's social connections are unraveling as the truth emerges. The community stands firmly behind you and Thomas." That evening, my phone rang with a university number. My design had won the competition. Thomas recovered enough to attend the award ceremony, proudly watching as I accepted the recognition that would launch my career. The next day, I listed the house on Maple Hollow Lane with a reputable realtor Thomas recommended. The proceeds were already designated, part for my education, part for a sustainable housing project I designed for my senior thesis. "Are you offering any support to Richard's family?" the realtor asked cautiously. "No," I answered, my voice firm but not bitter. News filtered in through mutual acquaintances. Richard and Tracy were separating amid their financial collapse. The luxury lifestyle had crumbled completely. Lily had moved in with a friend and taken a retail job. Meanwhile, I focused on my future, not their drama. Thomas introduced me as his protege at industry events, his pride evident to everyone present. 3 weeks later, the realtor called with news. The house had sold for $520,000, $40,000 more than Richard originally paid. As I hung up, a voicemail notification appeared. Lily's number. "Sam, it's me. I just wanted to say I understand now. I'm sorry, really sorry." Her voice sounded smaller, stripped of entitlement. "I'm working at the mall now. It's actually not terrible." I didn't call back immediately, but saved the message. Thomas mentioned retirement, suggesting I might take a larger role in his consulting firm. The seed money for my architecture career now secured. Possibilities stretched before me like an open road. The question hung between us during dinner. What does real family look like now? Neither of us had the answer yet, but for the first time, we had the freedom to discover it together. I glanced at Thomas across the table. "I'm thinking of calling Lily back." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Family is what we choose to make it." I placed my hand over his, feeling the strength in his weathered fingers. "I choose this." 2 years later, the morning sun filters through my apartment windows, casting golden light across my drafting table. From here, I can see the Denver mountains rising majestically against the sky, a daily reminder of perspective. I trace my finger along the sustainable housing blueprint spread before me, pride swelling in my chest. 3 months into my internship at Westfield Architectural Solutions, and my designs are already catching attention. My phone buzzes. Evan's name appears on screen, and unlike 6 months ago, no anxiety tightens my chest. Just warmth. "Still on for dinner tonight?" he asks when I answer. "Absolutely," I smile, adding, "Thomas is bringing that wine he's been raving about, and I finally perfected my grandmother's lasagna recipe." After we hang up, I return to my design, a community housing project incorporating local materials and solar integration. The firm's sustainability director called it inspired yesterday. 2 years ago, such praise would have left me desperately searching for the hidden criticism. Now, I simply accept it as truth. Later that evening, My apartment fills with laughter and conversation. Thomas sits at the head of my dining table, silver hair catching the candlelight as he debates architectural theory with my study group. Evan helps in the kitchen, our movements around each other comfortable and respectful. No pushing, no demanding. Just partnership. So, Samantha, my classmate Jordan asks, between bites of lasagna, what's your family background? You never talk about where you grew up. The question hangs in the air. Once, it would have frozen me with shame and rehearsed lies. Now, I simply smile. I'm building my family now, I say, gesturing around the table. Some family you're born to, some you choose along the way. Thomas catches my eye, his proud smile saying everything words can't. The proceeds from selling what should have been my house, the one my father and Tracy had kept from me, funded this new life. Thomas's mentorship provided the rest. Connections, guidance, and unwavering support. After dinner, while others help clear dishes, I step onto my small balcony. The city lights below shimmer like earthbound stars. In my journal, I wrote this morning, I don't need to earn belonging anymore. 7 words that took 23 years to learn. When Emily, a first-year architecture student, joins me on the balcony, her eyes are rimmed with tears. My parents say I'm wasting my potential, she confesses, voice barely audible above the night breeze. They wanted medicine, not architecture. Sometimes I feel so alone. 2 years ago, I would have shouldered her pain, made it my responsibility to fix. Now, I simply listen, offer resources that helped me, and maintain the boundaries that keep me whole. You can love someone without sacrificing yourself, I tell her. Sometimes the kindest thing is standing firm. Back inside, I notice my phone lighting up with a message. Lily, can we talk someday? I miss you. I consider her words carefully. The old Samantha would have rushed to respond, desperate for any familial connection. The woman I am now types, when you're ready to build something real, I'll be here. The mountains outside my window remind me daily of perspective, how distance reveals the true shape of things. My latest design, featured in last month's Sustainable Architecture Quarterly, sits framed on my wall. The housing project breaks ground next month. My graduation certificate, signed just weeks ago, hangs beside it, Thomas beaming from the front row as I cross the stage. Later, after everyone leaves except Thomas and Evan, we discuss the possibility of a business partnership. My sketchbook lies open on the coffee table, preliminary designs for my own home taking shape on the page. You've come far, Thomas says, his eyes crinkling with pride. I smile, thinking of the journal entry I wrote this morning. Family isn't who you're born to, it's who helps you build your life. For the first time, I truly understand what it means to be visible.